Hello, welcome to the Knitting Pipeline Extra. I am Paula. I'm the host of the show. I'm also the host, straighten myself up a little bit. I'm also the host of the Knitting Pipeline podcast, which is an audio podcast. It's available on iTunes and on the blog and I think on Stitcher. I think that's the name of the other one. I should get it on all of those things, but anyway. I live in central Illinois with my husband. We have grown children and two adorable granddaughters, so sometimes you'll see things that I'm making for them. This is about knitting and quilting and sometimes needle felting, embroidery, whatever I happen to be doing. I'm doing the knitting first, as usual, and then I'll have a timestamp below so you can see when the quilting starts. If that's all you're interested in, you can just jump ahead to that. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. Also, in the last episode, I mentioned that the viewership was down a little bit because of, I didn't know why, but people said they never got notification. There's something different about YouTube. So what I have determined from getting feedback from people is that you can subscribe to the show, and then there's a little bell symbol next to the subscribe button. If you click subscribe and you click on the bell, then you will get a notification whenever a new episode comes up. I'm sporadic. I generally do this about once a month. So yeah, that holds true with all of your video podcasts that you watch. And I wondered why I hadn't gotten notification on some of the ones that I regularly watch. And so apparently things have changed a little bit. So if you would do that and also click the thumbs up if you like the show, that helps it, you know, in the recommended for you, it may come up for other people. I have found some great podcasts that way, just from looking at what YouTube thinks I'll like, which sounds crazy, but it's true. So let's move into the knitting. I really don't have that many things to show because there were some long-term projects. And so let's start with the good one first. Hang on, I gotta reach over here. I didn't organize myself real well. I actually got a new tripod for my iPhone because the other one, you may have had this issue if you bought a selfie stick that also can fit onto a tripod. This other one I had a tendency to, it clamped it so hard and it was difficult to position the tripod holder so it wouldn't hit one of the buttons, the on-off button or the volume button. So I bought a new one and it took me about an hour to get it set up. Now that I've figured it out, but I only have a narrow window of time here while my husband's gone. But anyway, that's just a side note. So the first knitting project is called Reiko by Berg. It is a shawl and the pattern calls for Quince & Company Piper, which is a lace weight. It's a mohair blend. Beautiful. But I've been looking for a way to use some Seven Sisters Arts. Sorry, Quince. I bought Seven Sisters Arts from Karen when she was a vendor at my Knitting Pipeline retreat in Kennebunk, Maine. And this was actually purchased 2 years ago. And I've been trying to find the perfect project for it. And when I saw this shawl, it was Jan Smiley had it at the Knitting Pipeline Georgia retreat. I just knew I had to make it because it has a leaf motif. Oops, sorry. I'm so sorry I bumped the table. Maybe I can take that out. I don't know. I'm not that adept at it. Okay. So here is the shawl. It's a big one. Whoops. I think I got the wrong side. Wait a minute. No, that was right. That was correct. This is the front. I'll stand away so you can maybe, yeah, there you go. You can see the leaves better. This is an asymmetrical triangle, but it actually turned out it is kind of symmetrical. I don't know how she did that, but anyway, it's large and in sport weight, I believe. So the way I would wear this, and it'll be a winter one, is probably like this, all bundled up on top of a coat or jacket. I love the color. It's called Lodestar, and this took 3 skeins of the Seven Sisters Arts Zenith. I think it's the base. Oh, it doesn't look good with my striped top behind it. I can tell you that. There we go. Okay, and one of the things I really appreciated was the border. This was done with short rows, and what she did was that she continued the leaf motif so that you wouldn't have any chopped off leaves on the border. So two of the borders, one of them's kind of wavy just because of, this one over here is wavy just because of the nature of the lace. And then this one is bound off with short rows. So that is the Reiko, R-E-I-K-O, by Melanie Berg. Well, here you can see that it is sort of asymmetrical because the sides aren't entirely equal. I just enjoyed knitting that so much. It was, now some people did say, I forgot to say this on the audio, some people said that in their notes that they just memorized it really easily and didn't have to look at, keep bumping the table because I'm trying to avoid glare from the window on my glasses, so I have a leg between my two legs. It's not real comfortable. I guess I could have moved the table. Maybe I'll do that next time. Didn't think of it. It seems so obvious now. But anyway, I was saying about the Reiko shawl. Some people said that they memorized it really quickly and then they didn't have to look at the chart. I couldn't do that because of the way that the shaping is done. It's always changing on the edges. But with that said, what I could do was just look at the chart and say, oh, it's that row. Now I do this at the ends. And so it wasn't like I was a slave to the chart really, but I didn't trust myself to know what to do on the edges because of the way the lace changed. So it kind of bothers me that my hands are cut off. Maybe I'll just try not to move them so much. Okay, so I didn't write down the measurements of that. Now this next item, if I were, my husband and I watch a lot of British TV on Netflix and Acorn Media, and one of the things, well, the legal system in the UK and Australia is quite different than ours. We don't understand sometimes what's going on, but in the older ones, like in Dark 2, when there's a death sentence, the judge puts something on his head, like, so they know this is not going to be good. It's just, I don't think they do that today. I hope not, but I don't think, yeah, anyway, we'll not get into that. However, if I were a judge, this would go on. I'd be putting something on my head. This, I have to say, I think I made a lot of people really happy because they laughed about my result on this Comfort Fade Cardi by Andrea Mowry, who is a great designer. It's a great pattern. This, I want to emphasize that my failure with this has nothing to do with the pattern. It's a classic example of choosing the wrong yarn for the wrong project. I think I was in denial for 3 months with this. And I used Quince & Company Finch and Tern, which is, they're both fingering weights, and I doubled it to make an approximate DK or worsted. I did swatch. I should bring my swatches, because I did swatch and I got the horizontal row gauge, but horizontal stitch gauge, but I did not get the row gauge. I'm assuming because it didn't turn out very well. So you want to see how it looks on me? It's huge. It's absolutely huge. Now, to be fair, it is supposed to have 2 to 4 inches of positive ease. And that means that zero ease would be that it would just fit your body exactly. And positive ease is going to be extra room. Now this is done in reverse stockinette. I might just start laughing too. Anyway, I don't think I chose the colors too badly. This was stuff I had on hand, and that's why I used it. But the thing that really is terrible are the sleeves. Now, the body, and I don't know, I'm going to have to squat down or get further away. It has a very, very large shawl collar. It's so funny because when my husband was photographing this for me, I said, could you fix the collar? And he actually pulled it up like that. And then I saw the photos and I said, no, it's supposed to be down like this. So I have to squat a little. It's rare for me to have to do that. But anyway, I don't think it's a good sweater for my body type. And the sleeves are a little long, as you can see here. I think I got so caught up in the stripes, and with the sleeves, I got down in here and I realized that it was getting a little long, but I had to cram in quite a bit in order for this sleeve to match the side. I don't know. And the other thing you can see is that the armhole is really big. Now, I gotta get this thing off. It's ridiculous. Oh, yeah. So, also, this is being in reverse stockinette. I just adjusted the camera a little bit, so I'll edit that out, hopefully. If not, you'll just see a close-up of my chest. Anyway, reverse stockinette. So, there were a lot of ends for this sweater because I doubled the Finch and Tern. And when the reverse stockinette is the outside, that's where you normally hide the ends. It's really hard to hide ends on stockinette. So sometimes I did actually weave in the ends on the outside of the fabric because it was easier to do. However, on these cups, if I can find that massive sleeve, that one's not too bad. It must be the other one. Oh, it's when you flip it around. So here it is. The cuff, I kind of ran the, see, it's just, it's really messy. Now, the pattern, when you see the photos of Andrea and Mowry wearing the pattern, or wearing the sweater, and she's beautiful, and the sleeves are fitted. So something went wrong with this. And the other thing I forgot to mention on the audio is this thing weighs a ton. I mean, I am going to have to weigh it, but I think it's at least 2 pounds. Just guessing. I'm thinking of holding a 1 pound butter in one hand and thinking, yeah, it's pretty heavy. I don't think I did too badly on the colors. It's Glacier and the light blue, and then Odd One, Goldfinch, and Booth Bay Blue, which is like bird's egg only in the Tern. So I could lift weights with it. So that is Comfort Fade Cardi. It may be finding a home sometime soon because I thought everybody talks about big roomy sweaters that they can wrap up in. I've decided they're just not for me. I don't like big bulky wrap me up kind of sweaters. That is part of the issue. And now they're popular. I guess I had enough of those in the 80s when sweaters were pretty much like boxy stuff. And for my form, I'm just too petite, height-wise, I'm short. And my frame, these big bulky sweaters just don't do much for me, I don't think. So I'll put that thing on my head and put the Comfort Fade Cardi over there. It took me 3 months to knit that because I started over 3 times. I had different issues, and it wasn't the fault of the pattern. Again, it was all user error. I had a couple of issues with it. So that, yeah, there was a lot of knitting time on that. The sleeves themselves, the shawl collar took a week. That's a lot of knitting. So anyway, my best advice on that is a great sweater if you want to knit it. Buy a kit. There are kits out there by different companies, and that would be the way to go because it's just too hard to figure it out on your own. Meanwhile, my daughter-in-law, she doesn't watch this show, so I'm safe here. And it's okay if it's not a surprise, but she asked me to knit matching hoodies for the girls for fall, and she specified the color. She loves the Quince & Company Pomegranate colorway, which is this. I don't think it's not as red as it looks. It's more of a muted color than it shows up here. So I looked through Ravelry as one does, and I decided to do the Odette hoodie by Carrie Bostick Hoge. This is the pattern is a cardigan. It has large buttons. It's really, really cute. But my daughter-in-law specified that she wanted pullover because when I knit the Gramps cardigan, I think it's called Gramps, yeah, by Tin Can Knits, Helene, the 3-year-old, she just kept fussing with the buttons and couldn't get them right. And so Emily said it's just easier just to have over the head. So I turned the cardigan into a pullover, and here it is. I don't need to stand up for this. This has not been blocked. This is for an 18-month-old. I love the garter ridges. I think she did a really good job of tying those in by just this little band of garter down here. I haven't talked about this on the audio yet, so if you feel like you've missed something, I'll go into more detail there probably. That's what I tend to do, and when I get this blocked out. But the one thing I wanted to mention, I might have mentioned this before, but because my granddaughters live in North Carolina and we live in Illinois, I can't try these things on them. And Jan Marie, who is a wonderful moderator on our board, said that she buys a shirt or something in the size that she's knitting for. So in this case, an 18-month-old size would be good to use to make sure that it's working. So anyway, my daughter-in-law had just purchased some really cute cotton, sort of light summer sweaters at Target. She got them for $5 each, which was a great deal, and they were really cute. So I took that 18-month size from her Target sweater, and I measured it and made this diagram. So even though I don't actually have it, I could measure this up against the measurements I had for that. And then she had also bought it because they were so inexpensive. She had a toddler 3 T. And I had the measurements for that. Now these were very oversized. So the other thing I did was I took the Ann Bud's handy book of patterns and found her cardigan pattern and the sizing, and then I looked at the the sleeve length, and I should have done that on my comfort fade. I did this, checked the sleeve length, the width, and then the length from the armhole down. So I'm hoping it fits. I'm halfway done with the one for, well, she's 3 now, and I'm knitting to a 4-year size because they tend to like things a little bigger on her. So that's what I did there. So that project's in the works. And then I had to go get some water. So I'm back. There'll be a little glitch there in the video. The other things I'm working on, should have got these while I was up, but I'm knitting the Galiano socks by Tracie Millar. This is the first one. I put the sock ruler in just so you could see the beautiful pattern here. I talked about how I thought I would fall in love with sock knitting all over again when I started these. The yarn is from Mount Ruchin Studio, and I started on them, and they didn't grab me at first, but I told myself just knit a little bit every day, and in 3 days I had almost finished the sock. In fact, yesterday I realized I had overshot the toe and I had to take back about 2 to 3 repeats. Oh, I reached down again. My yarn bowl here was made by my husband. He's a wood turner. It's beautiful. Let's see if he put the date. He didn't put the date, but look at that. He sort of recreated the logo for the show. Yeah, what a guy. Anyway, I'm having fun with the socks. I'm not sure if I'm back into sock mode, but I'm definitely enjoying, well, it would help if I stayed in the frame, wouldn't it? I'm definitely enjoying the Galiano socks by Tracie Millar. And then, here I go again, reaching across the table. But the other thing I'm making is just have it here, Norwegian fur top-down cardigan by OGE Knitwear Design. I started making this for a boy. I thought maybe I could get away with it, and I think I could have. quite possibly if I had closed up the yarn overs, but I'm not sure if people would actually put this on a boy, especially because it is an 18-month-old size. But it has, this is Quince and Company in Carrie's yellow, and it's chickadee. The pattern actually calls for a DK weight, so I'm knitting the 18-month size. It's so cute though. I think this will fit my granddaughter, the younger one. She's 11 months now, which seems incredible, but I just love knitting garter stitch, and I think it looks great on babies and toddlers. It just has a real simple kind of homespun look to it, not homespun in terms of yarn, but folky look to it. And also I love that that has that little detail on the raglan. Missy, my friend, she's knit so many beautiful baby and toddler sweaters and child sweaters, and I saw that she had made that, and it's been in my queue for a while, and I just really wanted to make it. We'll see who it ends up with. One more thing for the knitting section of the show. Oh, actually I have two more. But we are doing Jan Marie Knits. She's a friend of mine. She's been watching the show or listening to the show from the beginning. She decided to start a knit along in our group, and it's called the Book Knit Along, I think that's what she called it. Anyway, the idea is that you knit things from a book on your shelf or something you've purchased. It can be an ebook or a physical book. And for example, if you have this by Susan B. Anderson, this is just the handiest one I had because I'm going to knit something out of this soon. And a lot of us buy knitting books, and then we get all inspired by them, and then we get kind of sidetracked. And if we want to make our books really more valuable, I wouldn't say they're not valuable if we don't knit out of them, because inspiration is one thing, but I would like to knit from some of the books I have. So I am looking through those, and if you'd like to join in, this knit along is in progress, and it goes all the way until I think the end of October. So you have plenty of time to knit from a book. Thank you so much, Jan. I don't know if she watches I think she does watch the video too, but yeah, it was really a great idea for her to start that. The other thing I have to show, and then we'll be done with knitting and moving on to quilting. I do have quite a bit of quilting and stitching, but Quince and Company has a new yarn weight. It is the worsted version of their Willet, which is cleaner cotton. And they sent me samples of it, and I'm just about ready to place an order. I love this color. I think this might be called Haze. I don't know. These samples I got, it had not been released yet, and the samples don't have tags on them, but you wouldn't have too much trouble figuring out what the color is. This pale pink, I think, is just beautiful and actually looks good with this blue. So this has a really great ply on it, twist, and I really want to knit with it. So since my granddaughters live in a warmer climate, cotton is a good choice. However, I generally don't love knitting with cotton, but I don't know if it's the ply or what, but it feels like this would be really fun to knit with. So I'm going to give it a shot, and I absolutely love the feel and the colors there. Surveying my landscape here to see if I've included everything. I think I have, so I better look at my notes. That would be a really good idea, to look at the notes. Well, I'm not going to talk about a dishcloth. At the beginning or the end of the video, I might put in a little footage of the Clydesdales and the parade that was in our town. 5 years ago, our town, in November, it'll be 5 years in November, we had a massive tornado. Some of you already know about that, but this was to honor the responders of the tornado. And it was so fantastic. I was standing literally about 3 feet from the Clydesdales for about 10-15 minutes. And I did a little live story on Instagram, which I don't do stories very much. And I I don't post enough on Instagram. I should post more, but I always just think, oh, no one's going to be interested in that. But people, obviously, people were. I was shocked at how many people came on while I was live, doing that live. Anyway, I might put a little of that in at the end or beginning in case you missed it. Okay, so we will move on to quilting. I am back with quilting. Last time I showed you the quilt top I had finished, which is Grandmother's Fan by Missouri Star Quilt Company, and I had sent that off to my friend Nancy in Minneapolis for the finishing because she has the big long arm, I don't know what, I guess it's called long arm quilt machine, and she does such a beautiful job. And this actually turned out quite large. It could fit on a queen size bed. It definitely fits on a full size with room to spare. So it is, you can't see it right here, but I will insert some photos. It is in our guest room / my husband's study, and it looks beautiful on the bed. Now, a couple of things about that. I did a border called a piano key border. That was not part of the pattern. That was my own idea because I just felt like I wanted to do it. I had plenty of 2.5-inch strips left over from the jelly roll. If you are sending your items off to a long arm quilter for finishing, they have suggestions / rules. I missed one of those. And Nancy was so sweet. She went ahead and finished it. But number one on the list, and I'm sure she sent me this before because it's actually on the back of the bill that she sends with the finished quilt. It says stay stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge around the perimeter of the quilt using a normal stitch length and a walking foot, especially on piano key borders. This will keep the seams from popping open. Be careful not to gather or ruffle the edges. Then it says omit this if there are 8 seams or less around the edge. Well, I probably read that at some point. I thought, well, that doesn't apply to me. I'm never going to be doing that. I don't know. But anyway, Nancy, thank you for taking care of that. And then she has a lot of other, there are 9 points here of things that I need to know. And if you are, the main thing is if you are sending your quilt off to someone for finishing, you have to have more excess for the backing. They need at least 8 inches for putting it on their frame. So I did have that, and that issue is coming up shortly. And then you also need to press it, cut off all your threads and things like that. Just being respectful of their time, which I wish I had read that again and realized that on the piano key border I should have gone around the outside. But anyway, sorry, Nancy. I'll remember it for sure when I do that again. Something I want to say about this that I don't think I mentioned before is that I had purchased a couple of layer cakes, which are 10-inch square packs, and one of them was in white and creams. It was a neutral collection. So I used that, and I used most of that. There were some that got a little too yellow looking and some that almost looked a little green that I didn't use. And a lot of them are white on white prints. And I then got some yardage, white yardage, and I wanted it. And when you look at the quilt, it just looks like all the white is white, but it isn't. There are some prints in there and some solids. But what I didn't realize is that 10-inch squares, there's a very odd noise right now. Can't be my phone because that's what I'm using here. It almost sounds like a beeping of some kind. I don't know. I won't be able to do anything about that. But it's annoying for me. I don't think it's picking up, but it's distracting. Anyway, not all 10-inch squares are equal. When you get pre-cuts, they have the sawtooth edge, and I started comparing these with another brand and realized, yeah, 10 inches, it depends on what they're measuring from. And I thought that the 10-inch was always was measured from the point to the point, but some of them I think must measure from the valley to the Valley or something, because these, yeah, they were all the same within that packet, but I had some others, and then when I cut 10-inch squares, they were different. So I ran into that a little bit. It was not a huge deal. I could square it off. But I also watched a recent Q&A with Jenny Doan of the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and that's the pattern that I used, the Grandmother's Fan from Missouri Star. And someone asked her with the pre-cuts what she considered the edge, and she said, I don't count the points. I consider that not part of the piece. And that made me think, well, no wonder my things tend to come out too big, because I had read that you do count from the edge of the point. So anyway, it's just something to be aware of. It's, yeah, something I guess I just didn't realize, but it would make a difference in size. And then for the Grandmother's Fan, they have a tool that you need to do that. And yeah, I'm really glad that I had that tool. I don't think you could do it very easily, because it's applique. You need to cut so many of those. But I meant to write down the name of that tool, but I think if you go to the tutorial, it'll tell you. So just look for Grandmother's Fan. Okay, now I'm moving on. When I decided to do while this went off to, oh, by the way, I will mention too, I love the binding that I chose for that. It's the black and cream or black and white stripe from Lecien, Lecien, and I got that, and I had another, like a blue print, and I asked my husband his choice. I really thought he'd go for the blue. No, it was blue chambray is what it was, and that's what the backing is on that. And he said he liked the stripe, so that's what I went with, and I really like it. It adds a little bit of a modern vibe to it, but also nostalgic in a way too. So I don't know, I just really like that stripe. So then I started on a large quilt that is going to be probably, well, it's for our youngest son, who his birthday is at the end of August. I better not count on that, because it's not even sent off to Nancy yet. She's got a couple weeks before she'd be able to get to it, I'm sure. And this is also Missouri Star Quilt Company pattern and tutorial. It's called Double the Fun. I hope I have it marked properly here. Yeah, here it is. Double the Fun. Get a better photo. This is Block Magazine, and here it is. It has a real 3D effect, and it's just stunning. It's a really stunning quilt. I used Tim Holtz Eclectic Elements. That was a kit I purchased from Tracie. And while I'm talking about Tracie, I'll say that I am a Tracie affiliate. So if you go to my blog, knittingpipeline.com, and you click on the link in the sidebar and it takes you to Tracie, then I do get a small percentage back from your purchases, whether they're classes or Tracie Unlimited or supplies. And I do purchase supplies from them. Not all supplies. I definitely support my local, believe me, they know me at my local quilt shops, especially the one in my town, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, Peddler's Way Quilt Company. So let me just dart across the room here, because this was too big to put on the table, but I used the Tim Holtz. Might be able to insert a photo here too, but here we go. The squares are pretty large. Yeah. And I just have the top done. I needed a large square to square these off, and I didn't have one. The largest one I had, I think, was 12 inches, and the squares needed to be trimmed down to 13 1/8, which is ridiculous. I went with 13 1/4 because mine were plenty big. And my friend Val, I called her up, and it's really handy to have a quilting friend and say, do you happen to have this? So you don't have to run, and they'll those things are expensive too. And I will probably buy one because I could see that it would come up again. But I didn't, yeah, she dropped it off at my house and I need to get it back to her. But let's see what else I wanted to say about this. There's more, believe me. Oh yes, I made 42 blocks, which is what the pattern called for. My sister, who was going to make the same quilt, said, "Are you sure you want to use all those blocks?" She said the quilt, it's going to be pretty big. If you use all those, it's 89 3/4 by 102 7/8. I said, no, I wanted a throw size. So I just used 30 blocks, 5 across and 6 down. And it still ended up a pretty good size. It is, the unfinished top is 65 by 78. So it's pretty good size. Now let's talk backing. Now, when I send quilts to Nancy, who is Grace and Peace Quilting, I buy the back or the batting from her. She just supplies that. You don't have to do that. You could buy your own batting and send it, but why? It's, yeah. So I just, yeah, I let her deal with that. And one thing, as I've mentioned before, you do need to have more excess. Now, I purchased the kit from Tracie, but I didn't make the quilt that was in the kit. I didn't really like it. It's called World Clocks, but it did include the backing as well. However, since I didn't make the quilt that was in the kit, I kind of assumed that the backing would work, but it was a little short. It was 4 yards, and I needed what? Well, yeah, you do the math. It was 73 by 86, and I needed to, no, that's what I needed. It was 65 by 78, and I needed to add 8 inches on each of those. So I needed 73 inches by 86 inches. So it was short, and but there was another piece of the fabric, and I kept working with the yardage. I spent my entire weekend, all my quilting time last weekend was trying to figure out this backing and piecing it together. I thought I had it down. And I don't know why I was so, well, I do. I loved the fabric. I wanted to use it. I did come upstairs and I looked online and couldn't find it. It's not available from Tracie any longer. So I'm going to grab that so you can see it. The fabric is, it looks like graph paper with airplane, like vintage, you know. It's just a beautiful fabric. So I decided to piece the fabric. Now, a lot of people piece backings. Well, a lot of the time you have to, even on a relatively small quilt, if one side of it is, well, it depends. You got to have at least one side that'll work with the 40-inch width of a fabric, but otherwise you have to piece it. But again, I needed 8 inches extra for sending it to Nancy. I did consider doing this myself, but yeah, I haven't ruled that out entirely, to be quite honest, but pretty much. My machine, as I said before, it only has a 6.5 inch throat space. That's to even roll it up and get that in there. I just don't find that enjoyable. And everything else about my machine, I really like. So what I did was I had plenty of fabric left, and I do, because I have 12 blocks left, I intend to make another quilt, but it won't be this quilt. It'll be a quilt as you go probably, and all the blocks will be different except for those 12. So I pieced together 2.5 inch strips and put them in the middle of this. Now let's see if I can give you an idea. It's not in the middle exactly. I didn't want it to be right in the middle, and it's like 1/3 of the way. So I pieced all the way, I can't remember, well, I think it was the 73 inches across. I pieced it, I put that in. Previous to that, I had sewn and left selvages in there, and I just figured that's probably a no-no. But I was going to try to sneak it in because I thought, I think I need these two inches that the selvage allowed. Now, you wouldn't see the selvage, but I just had a feeling that Nancy wouldn't like it and would say, oh, there's some reason that you can't do that. So I actually took that seam out, cut off the selvages, and would you believe I needed those. I needed that selvage. It's too short now. It's only 6 inches on one side. So I have 8 inch, plenty of 8 inches on the one and 6 on the other. But I just didn't feel right about leaving those selvages in there. That didn't seem right. So anyway, I have some options. I could decide to do it myself because I don't need the 8 inches. I could just, I could use this for another quilt because I intend to use the fabric to make a quilt as you go, and I'll still need the backing for that. Or I can buy fabric, and that's kind of where I'm headed. And I'm going to get the 108 inch wide. Now, if you're not aware of that, you can purchase fabric that is extra wide, and then you don't have to piece the backing as long as one of your sides needs less than 108 inches. So I kind of think that might be the direction I'm going in. I looked online and I did find one of the prints that's in the fabric, and I wasn't definitely needing something from this collection, but I was surprised that I found 2 fabrics from this collection that actually are the wider one. So I may just do that, and lesson learned. Believe me. I think, yeah, that's just the way I have to go. Okay, now, while I was trying to make a decision on whether I was going to quilt this myself and I was thinking of turning it into a quilt as you go. I made a baby quilt. And let me back up just a little bit. Last time I showed you the quilts I had made for my granddaughter's birthday, and it was a big hit. She called it the big quilt, and then the doll quilt. They just turned out really cute. She immediately got the idea. She had gotten a baby doll for her birthday, and she put the doll quilt on it, and it was cute. I hope she really enjoys it, and she wanted to take the quilt with her to bed. Her bed gets a little crowded because she likes lots of stuff in there. She has a little hoarding thing going at bedtime with her stuffed animals and stuff. But anyway, I wanted to just insert that. It was so much fun to give it to her, and the stool that my husband made that I told you about last time. So anyway, this quilt, I wanted to try the Quilt As You Go, no, not Quilt As You Go, sorry, Missouri Star Quilt Company in Block Magazine, and I don't think I have that one here. No, I don't. They had a quilt called Charm Pack on Point, where you take 2 charm packs and you sew the squares together in a long rectangle, and then you cut the rectangle in 2 places and then reposition those pieces, and you end up with squares that are called on point. And that means that they're not, well, you can see it makes it look like the diagonal. Now you can piece squares and put them on point, but it takes a lot more work than this. This reminded me a little bit of the Elizabeth Zimmerman surprise jacket in knitting, because it was one of those things where I called my husband down. I said, now look at this piece that I have here, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut it here, and then repiece it together, and it'll be a square. And he said, really? I said, yeah, this is the kind of thing this woman thinks of. Anyway, it was so much fun. I forgot how much fun it was just to sew 5-inch squares together. I enjoyed it so much. And the fabric is Makower UK, Makower UK, and that's a company, and the line is called Counting Sheep. So for us knitters, there's sheep, they're really cute bunnies and birds, and oh, it was really fun to put together. And then I went to my quilt shop and went up in their clearance room, and I found this fabric. Now, I didn't have to piece it because the the quilt was small enough and I was doing it myself, so I didn't need a lot of excess. And then, just say, black and white for the binding. I just absolutely love this little gingham check. I actually bought that online, I think. Pretty sure I did. It's a woven check, and I just think it set it off so cute. So the finished size, see if I wrote it down, it was 39-inch square prior to washing. And then after I got it pieced, I layered it and I did free motion quilting and then put the binding on. And then after it was washed, it was 36 inches. So I told my sister that I was ballparking it. It was about 10%, and I figured it's actually 9%. I asked my husband to check it just to make sure I wasn't, you know how your math skills kind of are going like this as you get older. But anyway, I did it right, and I had estimated pretty close. So that is the Charm Pack on Point, Missouri Star Quilt Company, and the fabric is Counting Sheet by Makawer, UK, M-A-K-O-W-E-R. No idea how to pronounce that. So it is just such a cute quilt, and it's gender neutral, as you can see. I'll show it to you one more time since I love it so much. I've got all kinds of stuff on the floor here that I'm kicking around. Oh, one thing I wanted to say about it, if you make this, and this is totally, it would be fantastic for a beginning quilter because you're only sewing 5-inch squares together, and then you're cutting it and piecing. You have 2 seams to piece it back together, and then you're just finishing it off. So it would be completely suitable, but it looks so like you know a lot more than you really do because it ends up being on point. So it's fabulous that way, and so quick too. But what I wanted to say is that when I pieced it, I was very careful to make sure that I didn't have the same fabric because I had 2 charm packs and I sorted them out, and some of the fabrics were in there 4 times in each one. So some of them I had, I think, 8 of the same thing. So I was trying not to have any of those too close together, and I'd stand back and look at the layout and see that like the dark gray kind of popped, and I didn't want all the dark gray to be in one corner or together or anything. But then when he did the slicing and repiecing, there were places where they came together. Now you've seen the quilt, and I seriously doubt that anybody said, oh look, those 2 but see, these bunny squares ended up together, and several places there are 2 that are together. And I don't know how I could have avoided that, really. I mean, you'd have to be a genius, which I'm not, to figure out, yeah, when I cut this and piece it back together, are any of these going to be together? And anyway, what I would suggest, if that would bother you, get 2 charm packs that look good together but aren't the same. Like 2 1930s prints from 2 different companies, but that would blend together, or whatever you want. 2 children's. Right now there are a lot of grays, and in the gender neutral ones, there's a lot of yellows, grays, blues. You could get 2 from 2 different manufacturers, and then you wouldn't have that problem, probably. So usually there's more than 1 of each one in a charm pack like this because there are 42 squares, and there's not going to be 20 different fabrics in there for the most part. So a lot of them are doubled up at any rate. Okay, enough of that. I think that's just the cutest quilt. All right, then I'm going to talk about my maker's quilt, but first I'm going to tell you about a tool I bought. It's this. I see I've gone 51 minutes. This is long, but anyway, you won't see me again for a month, so. I bought this from Connecting Threads, which is, if you're a knitter, this is the equivalent, the fabric end of Knit Picks. It's a superior heavy-duty thread stand. Now, I had bought some thread in cones because, number 1, it's economical, and number 2, you just don't have to change. And really, 90% of my stuff is done on an off-white or a neutral like this. So to simplify my life, I just got 2 cones, a white and this one, and most of the time they work. Ivory, I'd say. I don't usually use a white, but like an ivory color. This is a heavy duty. I tried using my yarn caddy thing that has this. I have several of those, and I tried that, but you really need something like this to hold the thread up. And some machines, I think, can hold this, but mine can't. So that was, I think, a pretty good investment. I really have enjoyed using it. Sorry, a little noise making here. Okay, a couple of things. My current project, in addition to my maker's quilt, is the Modern Color Block Quilt from Sweetly Stitched Handmaids by Amy Sinibaldi. I think I've shown this book on almost every video recently, but I think it's just such a sweet quilt, and you need some solids. So each block has 2 solids and a print. I was in my local quilt shop, and they're starting to carry more charm packs, which I really like. And I saw this charm pack, it's called Watercolor. I think it's a Moda. Wait a minute, maybe I have. Yeah, it's Moda Watercolor. I took a photo, which I thought hopefully we'll remember to insert somewhere in here. So I started making the blocks, and oh my goodness, is this fun or what? They're just so fun. I have way more blocks than I actually need. I might divide them up and sort of put the low volume ones in one quilt. And then I bought white Kona cotton, the heavier one, to be the light color bordering the blocks. And that's just something that's a departure. I don't usually go for real bright like that. And the print, oh, I forgot to say the print, that was my very first charm pack I ever bought. And it was so pristine, and I never wanted to rip into it. But one day I just thought, you know what? This fabric isn't just for looking at, and so what if it was my first charm pack? And it only cost $8. I think I bought it probably about 2010. Didn't have any idea what I'd ever do with it, if ever do anything with it, because I wasn't even quilting then. But I call that the gateway drug into quilting. So that is my current project. It shouldn't take too long. I might end up making 2 of them since I have so many blocks. And then I got my American Patchwork and Quilting. This is the only quilting magazine I get other than Block, which is like a book, so I don't count it as a magazine, but it is. American Patchwork and Quilting. And I've been wondering what I'm going to do with the beautiful fabrics that Jean sent to me that I showed you a couple times ago. I found this quilt, I think, might be what I'm going to use that for. And then I'll pull in some of my other, because it's a scrappy one. It is called Sow Your Path, Sunshine and Shadows Log Cabin Block. Setting plays up the contrast of light and dark 19th century reproduction prints. And you also need 2.5-inch strips of neutrals. And I have a jelly roll that has neutrals in it. So I think I'm kind of set for that. And after I finish this baby quilt, I don't know if I'll start out right away or do a couple miniatures, I'm not sure, but that's definitely on the list. And then I'm working on my maker's quilt, which I've talked to you about before. So every time I finish a quilt, I'm making a block that represents that quilt, and then eventually these will all go together in a big quilt as you go. I don't know how big. I think maybe I'll go to the end of this year and see how many blocks I have, maybe fill in and start a new one. So the Baby Kisses that I made for my granddaughter, this is the block that I made for her. That's her name, and it says 3rd birthday. Let's see if I'm in the frame there. So that's the block for hers. And then her doll quilt, the block is almost as big as the doll quilt was. And I put it, the quilt said Sweet Dreams, Sleep Tight, I Love You, Good Night. And I just put Sweet Dreams, Helene. And then I put the moon and stars. Well, you can't see it if I'm out of the frame. But anyway, I didn't put the little doors on. That was too much trouble. But it doesn't have to be the exact representation. It's just a representation. The one that was most fun, back in April, I showed you some sweaters and hats that I made for my great nephew, and he was due sometime in July, I think the 9th or something, but we thought he was going to be born on July 4th. He ended up being born on July 5th. And I made a quilt, 2 sweaters, and 2 hats, and then I made a hat for his dad. I might be able to insert photos in here. So I'm going to try to cover up his name, or anyway, his last name. So this is the quilt block, and what I did was, okay, the sweater, the first sweater I made was from Susan B. Anderson's book. It was this one, and I did it in blue, so I embroidered that little blue sweater, the hat with the leaves, whoops, I think, okay, and then the tin can knit sweater and the hat. I just wanted to add in that when I did the embroidery for the little clothesline, I took inspiration from Susan's book, Kindred Knits, but I didn't copy it. I just had it in my head. And I wanted to give her credit for that because I just thought her drawings were so sweet. But I did my own thing, Susan, just so you know. The feather, I did the chain stitch to represent cables on there. And the scale of the sweater was so small that it didn't really look like it much. But then when I did the hat, I did a feather type stitch, and it really does look like a horseshoe or antler, that antler cable thing. I thought this was so fun, and I just like leaving that out, and I do a little bit, and I go off and do something else, I come back. I don't sit down and do this whole thing, and it's been such a pleasure to kind of look back on the quilt, do a little embroidery, and I just freehand all that. I mean, I draw it on the fabric with an erasable pen and then freehand it. Okay, one more thing. One more thing to show. I just realized that this is the end of July, the last day of July right now, and my sister might be visiting me at the end of August, and she's been doing a lot of quilting, so I'm going to ask her to be on the show. She can start prepping herself now. That would be really fun. I think you'd enjoy it. We're the same in a lot of ways, but we also have different styles, and she's not as big on reproduction quilts and things like that, fabrics and things like that. So my quilt shop, let's see if I can find it. Oh goodness. But anyway, there it is. I had it marked, but just slightly off. In American Patchwork and Quilting, this fall issue of Quilt Sampler, Fall Winter 2018, the 10 top shops. One of them is my local quilt shop, Peddler's Way Quilt Company. If you are ever in Washington, Illinois, and you're coming to the quilt shop, you can send me a message on Ravelry. I didn't even say my contact information, but I am Prairie Piper on Ravelry, and you can also leave a comment. Don't leave it on the show blog because I can't really access those. I read them, but I can't respond to them. But you could message me on Instagram, or you could leave a comment and your contact information below on this episode. But I'm just so proud of them to get that designation. And they are a great quilt shop, and I know them. I mean, there are a lot of employees there, but I'm in there so much that I kind of know a lot of them. So congrats to them. That is fortunately all, because now I've gone, it's an hour show, basically. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me, as I said, on Ravelry and Prairie Piper. The show notes are at knittingpipeline.com. I'm Knitting Pipeline on Instagram and YouTube. If you're watching this in the blog, you might not know that is on YouTube. I know that sometimes people like to have show notes on the YouTube. I put some bullet points there, but linking them there is not as easy as you think. And kudos to everybody who does that, but I just don't have time to do it. Everything that I talk about is either linked in the show blog or in this episode or in previous episodes. Most everything will be linked, I think, in the blog. Maybe not, I don't know. But anyway, you can always ask me. And that also reminds me that some of the videos that I've been watching have been doing they go through the comments and ask, when people ask questions, they'll address them on the show. I haven't really done that, but I think it would be a lot of fun. So if you have a question about quilting or knitting, I'd say knitting I'm most of an expert in. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I mean, I have been doing it for 40 some years, so you naturally learn a few things along the way, even though sweaters might not turn out like they should. But yeah, I can always research things too, but you can ask anything really, as long as it's, you know, above board, let's say. And I'll try to address those in future episodes. So thanks again for watching, and there may be some photos here at the end that I can share with you as well. And I'll see you in about a month. Take care. Bye-bye.
And that dog is gorgeous. It's only 9 months old.
Oh, is it? Yeah. I didn't know that.
One of the guys was talking about it. They were down here just talking about